Imagine if from this moment on, nothing anyone said or did could truly shake you. Imagine being able to witness negativity, criticism, or even outright disrespect without feeling the need to react emotionally. That kind of power, the ability to remain composed in any situation, is not just for the enlightened monks on mountaintops. It's something you can cultivate, and it begins with mastering emotional detachment. Now, detachment doesn't mean apathy. It's not about shutting down your emotions or refusing to care about people. Quite the opposite. Detachment means you are no longer held hostage by your emotions. You experience them without being controlled by them. You observe without absorbing. And that distinction makes all the difference. Think about the last time someone really got under your skin, maybe a rude comment, a passive-aggressive remark, or even an outright attack on your character. Your instinct was probably to defend yourself, explain, or prove them wrong. And why? Because in that moment, you felt their words meant something about you. But what if they didn't? What if their words were merely a reflection of them, their beliefs, their frustrations, their own unresolved issues? Suddenly, the weight of their opinion begins to lose its grip on you. This is the first step in emotional detachment, realizing that external events do not dictate your internal state unless you allow them to. The moment you make this shift, you step into a new level of emotional freedom, because now you're no longer looking at every interaction through the lens of what does this say about me, but rather what does this say about them? And that subtle shift changes everything. Now, someone cuts you off in traffic, it's not a personal offense, it's just a person in a hurry. A colleague takes credit for your idea, that speaks to their insecurity, not your worth. Someone ghosts you after a great date, that's a reflection of their emotional capacity, not a measurement of your desirability. When you detach from the need to personalize everything, you regain your power. But the real mastery comes in the next step, consciously choosing where your energy goes. Let's take an example. Imagine you're walking down the street and a stranger yells an insult at you. You have two choices. One, you can absorb it. You can feel hurt, get angry, dwell on it for hours, maybe even tell your friends about it, spreading that negative energy further. Or two, you can recognize that this person whom you don't even know has no real power over you. Their words are meaningless unless you give them meaning. And just like that, you move on, unaffected. This same principle applies in every area of life. The things that disturb you, the people who irritate you, the words that hurt you, none of them have inherent power. They only have the power you assign to them. The problem is, most people go through life reacting instead of responding. They let the world dictate their mood, their peace, their confidence. And as long as your emotions are at the mercy of external circumstances, you will always feel vulnerable. But the moment you decide, and it is a decision, that nothing outside of you can dictate your internal state, you step into real strength. So how do you actually practice emotional detachment? First, pause before reacting. When something triggers you, instead of immediately responding, take a mental step back. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Will this matter in a week, a month, a year? Most of the time, the answer is no. Second, remove the personal attachment. Instead of seeing situations as happening to you, view them as neutral events. Instead of thinking, this person disrespected me, try, this person is expressing something about themselves. When you stop personalizing, you stop suffering. Third, shift your focus. The more attention you give something, the more power it has over you. If you obsess over someone's hurtful words, you're feeding them power. But if you decide, I have more important things to focus on, you instantly diminish their impact. Your energy is your most valuable resource. Spend it wisely. And lastly, remind yourself of your own self-worth. People can only shake you if there's a part of you that believes them. When you cultivate unshakable confidence, when you truly know who you are, external validation, or the lack of it, becomes irrelevant. At the end of the day, emotional detachment isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming free. Free from the emotional turbulence caused by people and circumstances outside of your control. Free from the need for approval, the fear of judgment, the cycle of reactivity. And once you taste that kind of freedom, you'll never want to live any other way. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself, am I going to give them power over my peace, or am I going to stay in control of my own emotional state? That choice, your choice, determines everything. Think about the last time someone irritated you. Maybe it was an offhand comment, a dismissive tone, or even just an energy that rubbed you the wrong way. In that moment, you felt something, a spike of frustration, a rush of defensiveness, maybe even anger. And what happened next? You reacted. Maybe not outwardly, but internally, you played out the scenario, let it simmer, and carried it with you longer than you wanted to. But here's the truth. Nothing anyone says or does has the power to bother you, unless you let it. That might sound like a bold statement, but it's a fact. No one makes you angry. No one forces you to be upset. These are choices, ones we often make so quickly, so unconsciously, that we don't even realize we're choosing. But we are. The moment you truly understand this, you unlock a whole new level of emotional freedom. Because now, instead of being at the mercy of other people's words and actions, you realize that your peace, your confidence, and your happiness are entirely in your control. Let's break this down. Why do we get angry? Why do we let people get under our skin? The answer is simple. We assign meaning to their actions. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you might tell yourself, that guy thinks he's more important than me. Someone doesn't text you back, you might think, they don't respect me. A friend cancels plans last minute, you might assume they don't care. But notice something. None of these reactions are based on facts. They're based on interpretations. You don't actually know what's going on in someone else's mind. That person who cut you off might have been lost in thought, completely unaware of you. The person who didn't text back might be dealing with personal stress. Your friend who cancelled plans might feel guilty but genuinely needed the space. Yet, we take neutral events and assign them emotional weight. And once we do that, we feel the full intensity of the meaning we've created. We get upset not because of what actually happened, but because of the story we tell ourselves about what happened. Now let's flip this. What if, instead of defaulting to negative assumptions, you chose a different perspective? What if, instead of thinking, they don't respect me, you thought, maybe they're just busy? What if, instead of, they don't care, you told yourself, maybe something came up that I don't know about? This isn't about making excuses for people. It's about recognizing that you are in control of the narrative you create, and the narrative you choose determines how much power you give away or keep. A powerful exercise is to ask yourself, what else could this mean? The next time you feel triggered, pause and consider alternative explanations. 9 times out of 10, you'll realize that your initial reaction was just one possible interpretation, not the absolute truth. And here's where things get really interesting. When you stop assigning negative meanings to people's actions, you start noticing that you don't get angry as often. You don't feel as easily irritated. You begin to move through life with a sense of emotional detachment, not because you don't care, but because you refuse to let unnecessary stress take up space in your mind. Now, you might be thinking, but what about when people really are rude, dismissive, or disrespectful? What if they are being inconsiderate? Shouldn't I be bothered then? The answer is no, and here's why. When someone is rude, dismissive, or disrespectful, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. Their words and actions are a reflection of their character, their struggles, their insecurities. The moment you internalize someone's negativity, you take ownership of something that was never yours to carry. Imagine someone hands you a heavy bag full of garbage and expects you to carry it around all day. Would you take it? No. Then why would you accept the emotional garbage that someone tries to throw at you? You have the right to refuse. You have the right to say, that energy doesn't belong to me. This is why emotionally strong people don't waste energy on pettiness. They don't engage in pointless arguments. They don't seek revenge or obsess over what someone said or did, because they understand that allowing negativity to affect you is a choice, and they choose to rise above it. And here's the most powerful part. When you master this, you become untouchable. People feel it when you are no longer reactive. They sense when their words don't shake you, when their actions don't disturb your peace. And that, ironically, is what gives you the most power in any situation. Think about it. Who has more control? The person who is easily provoked or the person who remains calm and unshaken? Who commands more respect? The one who gets drawn into every argument or the one who remains composed? The next time someone says something that would normally bother you, try this. Pause, take a deep breath and ask yourself, does this deserve my energy? More often than not, the answer will be no. You don't have to react to everything. You don't have to engage in every battle. The moment you stop making other people's actions mean something about you, you set yourself free. So, from this moment on, decide that no one, not a stranger, not a friend, not even a loved one, has the power to disrupt your peace unless you let them. Your emotions belong to you. Your energy belongs to you. Protect it fiercely, and you'll walk through life with a level of power and confidence that few people ever attain. Think about the last time someone's words or actions got under your skin. Maybe it was a sarcastic remark, an inconsiderate gesture, or outright disrespect. In that moment, you felt a surge of emotion, anger, frustration, disappointment. And for a split second, it felt justified. But what happened next? Did you carry it with you for the rest of the day? Did it replay in your mind like a broken record, making you even more irritated? This is where most people get trapped. They don't just experience a negative situation, they relive it, feed it, and let it dictate their emotional state. And that's where they lose control, not to the person who upset them, but to their own unchecked reaction. Now, here's something most people never realize. You are not required to engage with every emotion that arises. Just because anger, frustration, or resentment appears doesn't mean you have to accept it, feed it, or let it dictate your behavior. Emotions are like invitations. You get to decide which ones you respond to. The problem is, most people don't decide. They react instinctively, automatically. They let emotions dictate their reality instead of the other way around. But once you learn to put space between a trigger and your response, you gain something incredibly rare: emotional autonomy. Think about this. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people, the ones who command respect, never seem easily rattled? They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't lash out impulsively. They don't waste energy proving a point to people who don't matter. That's not because they don't feel emotion. It's because they've trained themselves to master it. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. It doesn't mean pretending you don't feel angry or hurt. It means recognizing those emotions for what they are: temporary waves that only take you under if you choose to dive in. So, the next time you feel triggered, do something different. Instead of reacting on impulse, pause. Before you send that text, make that phone call, or fire back with a defensive remark, just stop. Take a breath, step back. Give yourself even a few seconds to assess. Do I want to feed this emotion, or do I want to move past it? That tiny pause is where your power lies. Because here's what happens when you stop engaging in emotional battles that don't serve you. You become unpredictable. You become someone others can't easily manipulate. When people realize that their words and actions no longer have the same effect on you, they either start respecting you more, or they reveal their own emotional immaturity. Either way, you win. Now let's take this even deeper. Why do some things bother you more than others? Why does a passing comment from a stranger irritate you while a similar remark from a loved one devastates you? It's because the level of emotional charge we feel is directly tied to what we believe about ourselves. If someone insults you in an area where you feel completely secure, their words won't affect you. If you have zero doubts about your intelligence and someone calls you stupid, you'll probably laugh it off. But if there's a part of you that already questions your own worth, a single comment can send you spiraling. So here's the truth most people never face. When something really triggers you, it's revealing an insecurity that already existed. The emotion you feel isn't just about the external event, it's about something internal that needs to be addressed. This is why some people seem completely unbothered by things that would ruin someone else's day. They're not superhuman. They've just done the internal work to remove the weak spots where negativity could seep in. They've reinforced their self-worth to the point where external criticism feels irrelevant. So the next time something upsets you, ask yourself, what belief is this emotion pointing to? Instead of blaming the other person, use it as a moment of self-awareness. Because once you heal the parts of yourself that are vulnerable to attack, you become unshakable. And that's the goal, not to become someone who never feels anything, but to become someone who chooses how they respond to what they feel. This isn't easy, it takes practice, but once you start, you'll notice a shift. You'll stop wasting energy on petty conflicts. You'll stop needing validation from people who don't matter. You'll move through life with a sense of peace that others will feel. And when they see that their words and actions no longer shake you, they'll have no choice but to respect the strength you now carry. Because nothing is more powerful than a person who refuses to be controlled by anything outside of themselves. Think about the last time someone tried to get a reaction out of you. Maybe it was a passive-aggressive comment. Maybe it was a deliberate attempt to push your buttons. Or maybe it was something subtle, someone withdrawing their attention just to see if you'd chase it. And if you fell for it, if you reacted in the way they wanted, you probably walked away feeling worse, not better. Because that's the trap, isn't it? The moment you react on someone else's terms, you give them control over your emotional state. You become the puppet, and they hold the strings. But what if instead you trained yourself to be non-reactive? Not in a cold, distant way, but in a way that says, I decide how I feel. I decide what's worth my energy. I don't dance to someone else's emotional tune. There's a concept in psychology called emotional regulation, and it's one of the most powerful skills you can develop. It's the ability to experience emotions without letting them dictate your behavior. And the truth is, most people never master this. They go through life as emotional responders, reacting to every slight, every criticism, every shift in someone else's mood. But when you learn to regulate your emotions, you flip the script. You become the one who sets the tone in any situation, rather than someone who's constantly adjusting to the moods and manipulations of others. Now, let's talk about the power of silence. Because silence, when used with intention, is one of the most effective ways to reclaim control. Silence does something most people don't expect. It creates space. And in that space, people are forced to sit with their own emotions, their own behaviors. Think about it. When someone expects you to react, whether it's through anger, desperation, or an attempt to explain yourself, and instead you remain calm, composed, and unbothered, it unsettles them. It makes them question their own power. And more importantly, it forces them to face themselves. That's why silence is so powerful in relationships. If someone has taken you for granted, if they've disrespected you, if they've assumed you'll always be there no matter what, your absence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. And this isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulation. This is about recognizing that sometimes the most effective way to make someone feel your presence is by removing it. But here's the key. Silence alone isn't enough. If you go silent and sit around waiting for them to notice, you're still giving them power. The real shift happens when you use that silence to refocus on yourself, to redirect all the energy you were wasting on proving a point, winning someone's attention, or reacting to someone else's behavior, and instead investing it back into your own growth, your own confidence, your own fulfillment. Because here's what happens when you do that. They feel the difference. They don't just notice that you've gone quiet. They notice that your energy has changed. You're no longer seeking validation. You're no longer available for emotional games. You're no longer waiting for their approval to feel good about yourself. And that shift, that's what makes them feel your absence in a way that actually matters. This is why walking away with certainty is so much more powerful than walking away with bitterness. When you're bitter, you're still emotionally attached, you're still affected. But when you remove yourself with a sense of peace, when you step back, not to punish them, but because you genuinely know you deserve better, that's when they feel it in their gut. because people don't feel your absence just because you stop texting. They feel it when they sense that their presence no longer has the same hold over you. And here's the most interesting part. When you become truly indifferent, when you genuinely move on, not just physically, but emotionally, that's often the moment they start chasing. Not because you played some strategy, but because they feel the shift. The power dynamic has changed. They realize that the version of you they once had access to no longer exists. And maybe they'll reach out. Maybe they'll try to pull you back in. But by then, you'll be different. You won't need their attention the way you once did. You won't crave their validation because you'll have built something stronger within yourself. So the next time someone pulls away, disrespects you, or takes you for granted, don't argue, don't beg, don't over-explain, just step back, go quiet, and most importantly, use that silence to become someone they can no longer access in the same way. Because when you elevate yourself, when you grow beyond the version of you they once knew, you don't have to make them feel your absence. They'll feel it naturally. And by the time they realize what they lost, you'll already be on a whole new level. One where their validation is no longer necessary. Think about the way people perceive value. It's not just about what they see in front of them. It's about what they feel they could lose. Human nature is wired this way. We don't tend to appreciate something fully when we assume it will always be there. But the moment it becomes uncertain, the moment it feels like it could slip through our fingers, that's when we wake up. That's when we start paying attention. This is why it's not enough to simply pull away or go silent. If you want someone to truly feel your absence, you have to create a sense of perceived loss. And this isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulating someone into wanting you. It's about positioning yourself in a way that commands respect and recognition, because you are no longer assumed. So how do you create perceived loss? You do it by shifting the dynamic. You go from someone who was predictable, always available, always emotionally invested, to someone who is now a mystery, someone who is no longer guaranteed. See, the problem most people face when they pull away is that they do it from a place of insecurity. They go silent, but they're still waiting. They step back, but they're still hoping the other person notices. And that energy, that desperate, please notice I'm gone energy, it never works. Because deep down, that person still knows they have you. The real power comes when you don't just pull away, you evolve. You step into a version of yourself that is genuinely different from the one they took for granted. And when they look back, they don't just see a missing piece, they see something they may never get back. This is where the concept of social proof comes in. Social proof is a psychological phenomenon that says people determine the value of something based on how others perceive it. In other words, we don't just decide if something is valuable, we look around and see how others react to it. And the moment other people start seeing you as desirable, as interesting, as someone they want to be around, that's when the person who took you for granted suddenly feels the weight of your absence. Because now they're not just missing you in a vague, abstract way. They're seeing other people appreciating you. They're realizing that the attention, the presence, the warmth they once had access to is now being given to someone else. And that creates urgency. That makes them feel like they might have made a mistake.